Hello, and welcome to the latest installment in our UXDX online series. I hope you're as excited as I am for the talks we have today. But before we go into those, I want to give a very quick introduction to UXDX and why we host these sessions. So at UXDX, our kind of motto is that the world is full of bad software. And what I mean by that is not software that doesn't work, but software that doesn't work very well. And I always go to my banking examples. So I have a bank with one of those new digital first banks, but I also have an account with a very traditional old bank. Now, technically, if you put a feature comparison list together, they probably all tick the same boxes, but I know one is much easier to use, and therefore I do a lot more business with that bank. And that's the kind of problem that we're seeing. It's not necessarily the features, but the usability that can be the problem. And our mission at UXDX is to help companies build an environment that can't build bad software, because we don't think it's down to the people. There's amazing people working in all of these different companies, but the environment that you're working in can often make the difference between whether it's a great product or one of those more frustrating experiences. And how we propose doing that is helping people move away from waterfall, or more commonly now today, it's water scrum fall, to truly empowered product teams, because those are the teams that can really learn from customers and iterate and make sure that it's a fantastic product. Now, that's really easy to say and really hard to do in practice. So that's why we run our conferences and these online events. But there's so much to cover in that end-to-end flow that we don't ask our speakers to try cover everything. We ask them to share how they're improving their part of the process. And hopefully when you're listening, you can kind of pick up some tidbits that you can apply in your context. So that's where the questions come in. So after all of the talks, there'll be some time for questions. So please do type in your questions on whichever platform you're watching this on, and we'll put those questions through to the speakers. But that's enough about me. We'll get straight into our first talk of this evening, which is Madeline Smith, who's the lead UX researcher at Cisco. Madeline will be talking about what winning the lottery taught me about team preparedness and research continuity. So looking forward to hearing this. Over to you, Madeline.
Thank you so much, Rory. So like Rory mentioned, my name is Madeline Smith. I am a researcher at Cisco currently, and I'm talking to you today about winning the lottery. So my question before I get into this, are you prepared for the unexpected? And when we talk about the unexpected, you might be thinking of things like your emergency preparedness kit. Do you have a go bag in your car that's ready to go for whatever emergency strikes? But that's not really what I'm talking about here, although it's probably a good idea to be ready for some things like that. I mean, in the context of work. What would happen to your work if you suddenly went away? Think about your calendar and what you have scheduled for this afternoon. Would happen if the power went out and you couldn't join your meetings? What work do you have planned for tomorrow? What would happen if you needed to call in sick? How would your team members handle your absence? What if you were absent longer for, not just an afternoon or a day? What if it was some sort of indefinite absence? There are lots and lots of reasons that people disappear from work unexpectedly. We often hear about the hit by a bus scenario, but that's pretty dark. People told me to take it out of this stream. So I'm going to reframe that in a more positive way. We're talking about winning the lottery. So what would happen if tonight you win the lottery, all of a sudden you're a billionaire and you never need to work ever again? What would happen to your work? Is your team prepared to continue the work that you've been doing without you? And so I want to share a little story about the time that I won the lottery. Well, not exactly. We'll get there. So 1 year ago, in April 2024, I had been working on a long-term project for about a year and a half. I was really proud of the work that the team had done so far, and I was super excited about the momentum we had going. We had just gotten some great new team members onboarded. There was a lot of excitement and a lot of interest in moving this project forward. And really, that was so excited. I loved these people I was working with, and I was super interested and invested in where we were going. I was planning for an important research study. I was in the middle of recruiting participants who were going to, be participating in that research. This study was really crucial to help us to plan what we were going to be doing next for the rest of the project. I went away for a planned vacation for a couple of days, And then right before I was supposed to come back from work, I got a call that completely changed my life. And this is where I won the metaphorical lottery. Um, I got a call from the adoption agency that I had been working with, and that my husband and I had been matched with a baby. So we got this call Monday night, and Wednesday morning, we went and met our baby. So within a day and a half, I went from planning to go back to work to suddenly going on parental leave. And that meant that I was away from work for several months. I logged in that Monday in kind of this, this state of confusion where I was panicking and trying to figure out what I was doing. Do I have a crib? Where was I going to sleep at night? What did I need to buy for my baby? What am I going to name my baby? All of these kind of things were going through my mind. And work was still something I was thinking about, but not too much. I really wanted to be able to turn that piece off and move on to this next exciting chapter of my life. So I was able to send a quick message to my boss and let him know what was going on, log into work for just a couple of hours to send out some messages, let everybody know what was going on. A couple people on my team knew that I was in this process and that I was waiting and that I might suddenly get a call like this. Other people I hadn't shared this detail with. So some of my collaborators were, expecting me to come back to work the very next day. And all of a sudden I wasn't there. So I set everything up and then I logged off for months. And in my absence, my team was able to pick up the pieces, continue that research study that I had planned, and keep the project moving along. So when I logged back in several months later with, a 4-month-old baby, I was able to catch up on all of the amazing work that they had done. The project had moved forward, and all of these dreams I had for this really big project I was so excited about had come true. The team had done amazing work even in my absence. So how did the team continue my work when I suddenly went away? And the answer here is pretty simple. They were prepared because of the detailed research plans that I put together. And so I want to do another story time here about how I learned to do research plans, do these really detailed research plans. And the answer to that is that I'm a recovering academic. I spent about 10 years in academia, first as a grad student, then as a professor. And that's where I learned how to do user research. The focus of research as an academic is on generating scientific knowledge and publishing. So the research process looks a little bit different than what we're used to here in industry and in corporate UX research. So I want to walk you through a little bit of that process and talk about what's similar and what's different. So the first part in UX research is having some sort of idea. You're going to be identifying your research objective, choosing a research method, and getting ready to do your study. In the next step in our UX world is we are doing some buy-in. We need to convince our stakeholders of our proposed approach. This might be a quick meeting with them. This might be a PowerPoint deck you put together or a Word doc you write. It might just be a quick Slack message saying, hey, here's what I'm planning. But you've got to get your team on board. And then you might have to do some sort of review. This really depends company to company, team to team. Sometimes there's a group of people who need to review your survey or your plan before you go out and contact users. Other times you don't even need this step at all. And then the fourth step here is actually conducting the research itself. So going out and doing your study, analyzing data, and eventually presenting your findings. This is the UX process that you're all pretty familiar with. I mentioned that the academic process is similar, but much more convoluted. So let me walk you through that. In the academic world, again, we have that same kind of idea. We need to identify a research objective and choose a research method. But this can take a really long time in academia because it's not just based on some things you're observing with your users or your data or conversations with your stakeholders. We're looking through academic literature. We're conducting literature reviews. We're reading papers. We're discussing debates, ideas, collaborating, all these different kinds of things that it can take a long time to even just come up with that initial research question that you want to ask. And getting buy-in in academia, really, really complicated. unlike my experience as a corporate UX researcher, where my salary is pretty set, I know what I'm going to be working on, and in general, my team's on board with that. As an academic, things are a lot more tenuous. You need to apply for and get your own funding to be able to do that research work. So that might be applying to internal or external grants to fund your work. And this process can take months or even years and involve a really, really lengthy, complicated process with a lot of documentation that you have to get put together. Similarly, the review process in the academic world is really, really onerous. You need to apply for something called approval from the Institutional Review Board, or IRB. And that IRB is an organization that's looking out for the protection of human subjects, so people who participate in research. And they have a really strict set of rules that researchers need to follow before you can have any sort of contact with your users. So this means you need to put together an incredibly detailed research plan, and you need to send this off for their review. They're going to go through this with a fine-tooth comb to make sure it matches every single requirement that the team has. And then after you've gone through that, probably there's usually a few iterations and revisions back and forth. I had times where I had to revise and resubmit my IRB approval just because of a typo in one of my survey questions, or something wasn't exactly grammatically correct. So every single piece of your work needs to be pre-planned, reviewed really carefully by yourself, the people working on this project, and then this external board. And again, after several months of waiting, eventually you get approval to go ahead and do your research, which might look exactly the same as the kind of research that we do here in the UX world. You might be doing interviews or surveys or whatever other types of research methods you're doing. You go out and do your research, you analyze your data. In the UX world, we're often presenting our findings internally to our stakeholders at a meeting. In the academic world, we were writing research articles and publishing those papers at conferences, journals, books, things like that. So the steps are similar. We still go through these 4 phases of a research process in both UX and academic worlds. But in academic research, this is really, really slow and really, really detailed. There's so much red tape that you need to go through at every single step here to make sure that you're meeting all these requirements. And like I mentioned, this is where I learned to do research. This is how I was trained to be a researcher. So I was used to having to get all of my ducks in a row, having to write out every single thing that could possibly happen during a study, having that really carefully reviewed by lots of people before I could even start talking to folks. So when I first came to the UX research world, I was a little bit surprised that people didn't spend as much time doing these really detailed plans that I was used to seeing in my previous environment. And when I would talk to people, they would say, "Oh no, I'm too busy. I don't have time for that. We're just going to, do this study right now. We're going to start our survey. We're going to launch it tomorrow." And over time, I've been in UX for about 4 years now. I made the transition. And over time, I've learned that it is really valuable for me to have a detailed plan. Not exactly to the level that I had as an academic, and not spending months and months to create it, but I do still take a lot more time and put a lot more thought and effort into my detailed research plans than a lot of my colleagues are used to doing. And so what does my research plan framework look like? So there are a number of things that I always include in my research plan. And I've got a template document that I'm happy to share with folks after this. I'll share the link at the end of the talk. But my template includes a couple different sections here. The first thing is a project overview. Then there's the section that is the research plan itself. That's including what research methods we're doing, what participants are involved, what the deliverables are, the timeline, and a RACI matrix. I always include links to other files and documents and things that are relevant to this project. And then I include some number of appendices depending on what is relevant for that particular project. So that might be recruitment messaging, that might be participant screeners, it could be the interview guide, the survey questionnaire, or the test plan if you're using an unmoderated platform. And in my experience, a lot of my colleagues are used to writing out some of these things, creating interview guides, writing their survey, but a lot of folks don't take the time to put this all together in one single document. And sometimes when I do this, I mean, my template here, if you look at this, this is 9 pages just of the outline without actually filling in the content here. So these could be really long documents once I fill in all of this information. And that can feel pretty overwhelming, both to create and for stakeholders to look at sometimes. But I'm here to convince you why that's important. So let's walk through it step by step. So the first section is this project overview. I like to use a consistent title in my templates, whatever the project is, include that this is the research plan. I like to include the date that this research was going to be starting, usually with the year and the month. I always include some status of this document. Is this the draft? Has this been approved? When was this last updated and by whom? And then I have just kind of a bulleted list at the top that calls out some key information. And these fields might change a little bit depending on the study and the information that's required. Sometimes for different projects, we need slightly different information. But the idea here is that anyone who opens this document could skim this first couple sections, this bulleted list right here, and have a sense of what this project was all about and be able to figure out whether this is something they need to look at more or not. Excuse me. So the next section is the research plan. And it feels a little silly to have a research plan section within my research plan document, but that's really what it is. This is the section that gets into the details of what that research is going to be. So I have a section that's usually about a paragraph long where I'm setting the context for this project and outlining the objectives of this particular study. So the academic version of this would have been a 10-page literature review, an introduction about this research problem, and a long, introduction to the objectives of the study. We're not doing anything like that here. This is about a paragraph long. And then for the research method, again, this is a fairly short description of whatever methodologies are going to be used for this particular study. Similarly, a section on the participants. Who are the people that are going to be included in this study? How are you recruiting them? How many people are you trying to talk to? What is the recruitment approach that you're going to be using? And then the expected outputs. What types of deliverables will you be creating from this study, and how are you going to be sharing them? Is it a PowerPoint report? Is it a meeting? Is it whatever else it might be? And really importantly here is the timeline. So from when you're kicking off this project till when you expect the research plan to be agreed upon by all of the stakeholders, when participant recruiting is happening, when the research sessions themselves will be happening, data analysis, reporting, creating your draft, and eventually scheduling out your research readout. And again, whether or not people are writing this out in a research plan, they're going through all of these steps. You're usually having some sort of readout at the end of your study. You are usually creating some sort of report. You have to do some analysis to get there. People just don't always take the time to write out what this timeline is. But for me personally, that's incredibly useful. I am a deadline-driven person. I need to know when something is due to be able to work backwards and make sure that I'm keeping myself on that schedule and going to meet that deadline. So for me, having this in writing is incredibly valuable. And being able to review this with my stakeholders during a meeting before we actually start the project to make sure we're all in alignment of what are we doing, when are we doing this, does this meet the project's needs? Okay. Another piece that I like to include here is the responsibilities matrix or RACI matrix. So who is responsible for, accountable for, consulted on, or informed about the different sections of this plan. And so in the projects that I'm working on, often that's the researcher, myself, or any other researchers I'm working with. That might be folks from my product management team or design team that I'm working with. Perhaps there's developers involved or leaders or change management or content, lots of other teams who might be involved as well. And it's really helpful for me to have everyone on the same page and really clear about what it is that we're doing and how everyone is involved. Another section I always include in these documents is links. So a couple of these I also had up in that summary at the beginning, but really this section of my document can have, sometimes there's 10 different links here, depending on how many different tools you're using for this project. I always include the shared folder that we're all working from. If there's a chat space that we're using to talk about this project, if there's a Miro board or a Dovetail project, OneNote, Figma, PowerPoint, whatever these files are that we're working with, I want to make sure that the links are here and easily accessible. My goal here is to make sure that anyone who looks at this research plan can pick up and find the other information that they need. And similarly, when I do my research reports, my final readouts, my PowerPoint template also has a link back to most of these files or to this document so that, again, people can see how the project started and where it ended up. All of this information is somewhat common for people to include in their research plans. What I don't see a lot of are the appendices that I include. So I include 1 to 3 appendices, kind of depending on what the project actually needs. So the one that I almost always include is recruitment communications. For me, writing messages that I'm going to send out to participants or potential participants and inviting them to participate in my study takes a surprising amount of time to carefully craft a message that is going to grab their attention and really draw them in to participate in a study. And so having this outlined I usually use these table formats where I can, just copy and paste this into an email makes it so much easier for me to make sure that I am using consistent messaging from one study to the next and getting alignment with my stakeholders. So everyone knows what message it is that I'm going to be sending out. Similarly, if I'm using some sort of screener survey to screen potential participants before they schedule, I might include those details in an appendix as well. Particularly if I'm using a platform with a panel to recruit participants, I might specify the different demographics and requirements of who is included and who is not eligible for this study. I might include the specific questions that they're going to be asked on that screener, something that is a single question where you're either accepted or rejected, or something that really has multiple options where they can choose. Really just detailing this information about what I'm planning to do helps make it so much easier so that everyone knows what was happening. Again, interview guide. Everyone I know who does interviews creates some sort of interview guide as part of their research process. It's not all that common in my experience for folks to include that in the same document as their research plan. But for me, I found that to be incredibly valuable, just having one link that I can share with anyone working on the project and they have all the information they need. So my interview guides are a format similar to probably things you've seen before. I have kind of an agenda listing the different sections of the interview. For each one of those sections, I include some information about the targeted time that I'm planning to spend on that section, maybe a note to explain to the facilitator what this section is all about. I include my questions, some notes to self of pause for questions, start recording, and then my questions that I'm going to be asking, along with optional follow-up questions, depending on how the interview goes. So again, the idea of an interview guide, you've seen this before. You might not have thought to include this in your research plan. Similarly, if you're running an unmoderated study, I include that test plan in the same document. Word for word, what is going to show up on that testing platform that I'm using. And again, with a survey, same concept. I'm including all the details that are going to be in my survey in my research plan. And so, like I showed you, this could be a really long document. The template itself with all of these blanks was about 9 pages. Some of these sections don't appear in every study, but the research plans that I work with tend to be quite long. I think the project I'm working on right now, it's about a 14 or 15-page document. These are living documents that I'm constantly referring back to as I go throughout my project. But a lot of people hear a 14-page document and think, I don't have time for that. Why would you ever take the time to put all of this information here? And that's a question that I've gotten a lot. And my answer for you is that the benefits here are going slow so that you can go fast. Well, what do I mean by that? What I mean is that taking the time upfront at the start of your project to fill this out and document all of the details that you have planned will make the rest of the project go so much faster. When I start working with a new product team on a new long-term project, one of the first things I do is take a copy of my standard template and start filling it in for this project itself. So I fill in most of the details, and then I highlight the sections that are going to change from project to project. And I'm doing this while I'm doing my introduction meetings with stakeholders, stakeholder interviews, planning, putting together my roadmap, all the things that you're doing as a researcher or as a UX team member at the start of a project. You can be working on this document as you go. This isn't taking a lot of extra time. It's really just helping you document what you've already done. And then when it's time to run my first research study, I don't have to scramble to pull something together because I already have that prepared. I have my basic outline and I can go in and change whatever pieces I need to. Similarly, once I finish that study and I'm ready to run the next one, I can just copy and paste that document and make the changes that I need and get ready to go with my next study without having to spend time thinking about all of these questions that I've already put thought into before. So while it might slow you down the first time you're filling this out, it really does speed things up for, in my experience, for the follow-up studies that come from here. Similarly, having these documents allows anyone else to pick up your work and continue on your project like I shared in my experience. So thank you all for listening to me. This was my talk about what winning the lottery taught me about team preparedness and research continuity. And I hope you're all convinced that writing detailed research plans is a good use of your time, even if it means going slower to be able to go fast later on. Again, I'm Madeline. I'm a lead UX researcher at Cisco, recovering academic, and parent by adoption. And if anyone is interested in seeing that research plan template, feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn or shoot me an email, and I will share that link to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Madeline. That was really interesting. And I guess congratulations on winning the lottery.
Thank you.
I'd say that's quite a shock going from, normally people have a 9-month lead in.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So we had a comment from Amy and Brian. They love this comms section being part of the plan. It tends to be an afterthought, and Brian saying yay. So some people agreeing with you there. Probably just a little bit tight for questions. We've only got about 30 seconds left. So I think if anybody has any questions, please write them in and we'll share them with Madeline afterwards. But other than that, I just want to thank you once again, Madeline, and hope everybody out there enjoyed it as much as I did.
Thank you.
Great. So we'll move on to our second talk of the evening, which is Shiva Maya, who's a UX UI designer, and she'll be talking about designing trust and how our interface choices shape our digital privacy decisions. So I'd like to welcome Shiva to the stage. Over to you, Shiva.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Shiva, and I'm excited to talk to you about a topic that's becoming increasingly important in our digital world. As designers, we have the power to influence how users interact with technology. And with that power comes the responsibility to make ethical choices that respect user privacy. Imagine this, you're browsing the web looking for a new pair of shoes. You find a website that has exactly what you're looking for. And they even offer a 10% discount if you sign up for the newsletter. You think, why not, and enter your email address? But what you don't realize is that by signing up, you are also agreeing to share your browsing history and personal data with third-party advertisers. The fine print was there, but it was buried in a wall of text that you didn't bother to read. This is a classic example of a dark pattern, where the design of the interface tricks you into giving up more than you intended. Today, we'll look at how dark patterns operate, especially in privacy contexts, examine their real-world impact, and explore how we can design for genuine trust instead. So, what exactly are dark patterns? Formally speaking, dark patterns are design techniques used in websites and apps to manipulate users into taking actions they might not want to take, such as buying products, signing up for services, or in this case, sharing personal data. These patterns exploit human psychology and user behavior to achieve the company's goals, often at the expense of the user's best interests. What makes them particularly insidious is how they exploit our cognitive biases, those mental shortcuts our brain take. We are not talking about poor design here. We are talking about deliberately manipulative design. In 2022, a report by the European Commission revealed that the prevalence of dark patterns had grown even further, with 97% of popular apps used by the EU consumers displaying dark UX patterns. This upward trend highlights the increasing reliance on these tactics across industries, even driven by a desire to maximize conversions and outpace competitors. Also, a 2019 report from Princeton University revealed the prevalence of dark patterns. The researchers analyzed about 53,000 product pages from 11,000 shopping websites and found that 11% of the sites surveyed featured dark patterns that were aggressive, misleading, and potentially unlawful. You have to know that dark patterns are not present in user experiences by mistake. They are carefully crafted to appear during a certain moment of the user interaction process. Sometimes there are design errors, and by mistake, the interface or user flow happens to benefit the company and confuse or mislead the user. But when companies realize this creates a benefit for them and then intentionally keep it that way, it becomes a dark pattern. Before we go through some of the most popular and recognizable dark patterns, it's essential to distinguish dark UX from bad UX. Bad design is a poorly designed website or a product that doesn't meet users' needs unintentionally. Dark UX is a dishonest design. It's crucial to know that dark UX patterns don't result from poor design. They exist with a mission to persuade users into actions instead of satisfying their needs. Moreover, customers usually don't notice a negative user experience because of a smooth flow. Let me see. At this point, it's common to think, why would companies use them in the first place? And you won't be surprised to learn that the answer is money. Industries generate more profit by creating a user experience that manipulates users to buy more, stay longer, or invite their friends to use their platforms. This usually only works in the short term, often at the expense of creating a frustrating experience. People remember bad experiences and negative emotions rather than positive ones. And let's discuss some of the most common dark patterns in UX and what to do instead. This is one of the most common dark patterns. Confirm shaming means appealing to emotional blackmail to persuade people to confirm or stop actions from taking place. It's okay to ask users if they are aware of and wish to proceed with their decisions. However, the wording and the way that is presented can quickly turn into a dark pattern. For example, the platform Duolingo sends you an email with their signature pet, an owl crying. This is one of the most universal yet effective communication methods. Showing sadness or vulnerability. We know an owl can feel sad because we are leaving a service. Most importantly, we know the owl is not even real. However, there is something that goes beyond logic and goes straight to our emotional core. According to The Verge, they have even redesigned Duolingo's signature pet over the years to widen the apparent facial expressions and cause an emotional reaction. Second one, we see the Roach model pattern when actions that benefit the company are sometimes intuitive, enticing, and even pushy. Conversely, actions that benefit the user and not the company are complex, ambiguous, and tedious. Companies often use this pattern to lure the user into taking an action by confusing or manipulating them. They make this process extremely smooth and direct. Once they perform these actions, it's hard to cancel or undo them. In most companies, subscribing to a newsletter is easy, straightforward, and pointed out with a big CTA. However, unsubscribing is done via email, and users need to find the word unsubscribe with a small gray font that goes easily unnoticed. Even after users try to unsubscribe, they are asked to confirm several times and fill out surveys that discourage them from continuing this process. Sometimes they even need to make a phone call or even go to a physical office. Amazon's users have had issues when canceling their Amazon Prime subscription with deleting their accounts as well. In fact, the company recently had to simplify the process required for canceling their Prime membership to meet EU regulations. The next one is pre-selection. We see this dark pattern often in conjunction with the Roach model pattern. With pre-selections, users aren't even enticed or manipulated into taking actions. The platform already pre-selected these actions for them. Again, this pattern applies to actions that benefit the company and that users won't usually choose by themselves. With pre-selection, users end up subscribing to newsletters or getting premium travel insurance without noticing. For example, when the company creates actions that only benefit them and not the user, it should be completely up to them to agree to that action after being informed of the possible benefits and conditions. With this another dark pattern, companies manipulate the user into giving their billing data or information, sometimes even promising a free trial or a discount in exchange for a product or service. With time, they start charging a recurring billing or subscription with no chance to opt out. They use wording and manipulation to assure the user they won't be charged anything right now. They start charging money after a month or two when the user forgets the subscription. In UX, it is important to give the user control and freedom to the actions taking place on the platform. If these actions involve billing, it's even more critical. This can be fixed easily by emailing the user to let them know they will start charging money 3 to 5 days before the end of the free trial. Intentional misdirection is the use of visual or text content that creates an outcome that is ambiguous, vague, or even worse, the opposite of the desired or expected outcome. Let's think of an example. A user wants to cancel a subscription to a newsletter. When asking to confirm this action, a button with the word cancel may have two meanings: either confirm the cancellation or cancel the cancellation. This can happen by unintentional or poor wording or visual indicators like color or shape. Companies use friend spam to manipulate users into giving them social media permissions and access to their contacts. They often disguise this action as inviting your friends or similar actions that seem to offer a positive outcome to the user. In 2013, LinkedIn received a lawsuit for harvesting some of their users' contacts, going as far as sending an email on the user's behalf to all the people in their email contact list. This could go anywhere from their boss to a friend from high school. Similarly, creating urgency is another typical dog pattern in UX. Dog patterns focus solely on the interest company while disregarding the user's interest. However, they use wording and emotional manipulation to present this urgent notification as something valuable to the user. Most social media platforms nowadays create this fear of missing out by hinting that something is happening within the app, but without explaining in detail what that means. A good example is a notification along the line of "your friends miss you" or "you have been invited to an event" to encourage you and find out what this is. Once you click or tap on the notification, you are inside the app and it can show you endless content and make you stay for hours. We all know and understand that companies want their customers to spend as much time as possible on their apps, but this gets out of scale often, and in reality, it invades the users' lives while providing very little value. Nagging is, in other words, not accepting no for an answer. The most obvious example is suggesting premium subscriptions or newsletters, but without allowing the user to refuse permanently. Replacing the no option with a not now, not yet, or maybe later removes the choice from the user to benefit the company. The user eventually may accept those conditions because they give up in a way after the platform has nagged them once a day, for example. And now, how to avoid dark patterns in UX design. If we want to avoid dark patterns and deceptive design, we need a good combination of research and common sense. For example, for research, it's essential to be aware of the competition. What are some good examples of UX from similar platforms? Do their users complain about UX dark patterns? How do they convince users to subscribe to newsletters or buy their products or services? Also, user testing is a great way to detect design errors that can potentially become dark patterns, and also to see how users react to the wording interface and user flow. For example, suggesting a premium subscription is too pushy or the wording makes them feel manipulated. Here are some common sense tips to avoid dark patterns in UX. You should be transparent with the user to earn their trust and give them control and freedom to make an informed decision before taking an action. Also, test and iterate your product until there is a balance between the users and the company's best interests. Follow the best design principles and usability heuristics to keep the design user-centered and avoid common mistakes. Create and design patterns that benefit the user, even if it harms the company. At some point, the user wants to feel valued and heard, and that they control the platform, not the other way. There are many ways to make the user feel valued and heard, even if it doesn't directly benefit the company. YouTube included 2 reminders to take a break and close the app, for example, every 60 minutes, and also a bedtime reminder to stop using the app between 11 p.m. and 8 p.m. For example, the YouTube mobile app includes tools to manage time spent on the app. Even though the platform encourages the user to spend more time, these reminders help balance the user's experience and avoid burnout. With these strategies, users will leave a genuine positive impression. This leads to satisfaction, positive reviews, and profit in the long term. Also, it helps to create more sustainable websites because it reduces content on a website, emails, newsletters, and unnecessary information in general. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with a thought. Every design decision we make is a moral choice. When we design interfaces, we are not just arranging pixels, we are shaping behavior, influencing decisions, and either building or eroding trust. We all know that companies want to make money by offering products and services, and there is nothing wrong with that. But there's a difference between inviting the user to interact with the platform in a certain way while still giving them a positive experience and pressuring the user to do things that do not benefit them or punishing them for acting in a way that does not benefit the company. Companies can find several reasons to avoid dark patterns. By following best design practices, they can build a positive brand image, maintain customer trust, and adhere to legal and ethical standards. In a long distance, it promotes transparency and a long-term focus on a customer satisfaction and loyalty, ultimately benefiting the company's growth and sustainability. As UX designers, it's not easy to balance out company profit and positive user experiences. Sometimes we don't even notice the design process we create causes frustration and even makes people lose money. But by learning more about dark patterns, we can understand further how to avoid them and enhance the user experience. After all, we can always strive to be more transparent and ethical to our target audience, and why not to ourselves as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a very common topic because it comes up so often, all these dark patterns that we keep seeing everywhere. So it was great to go through kind of all the different categories and sharing some advice as well. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
So yeah, just to reiterate, if you have any questions out there, please write them in on whichever platform you're watching, and I'll put those questions through to Shiva. But I'm going to start with one, and it's around, I guess it was early on in your talk around Duolingo and the emotion that kind of generates through their character. All sales are emotional. So is there anything really bad with trying to tap in to end customer emotions? Because that's what salespeople do. If you ever have a one-on-one meeting with a salesperson, they're going to try and make you like tap into your emotions. So is that really that bad?
I think that it's not right. I mean, for marketing, we target customers' feelings, but we are aware of these dark patterns. For example, I know that a customer go with the default checkbox. They rather keep it that way instead of changing it. So if I add like insurances, extra fees, and those kind of things, while I know they're not going to read it and they're going to proceed with that, this is not ethical.
Yeah. So those kind of like default options, I often find myself having to deselect the marketing emails. But I guess just on the emotion, is it wrong to try target? Are we not, with all of our headlines and everything, is all copy not in a way emotional?
As I said, in marketing, we should understand customers, users' feelings. But for example, if I want to make you feel bad about something, so I make you stay, well, that's not right.
Yeah, I guess it's making you feel bad versus
Yeah.
trying to tap into your hope. Brilliant. What do you think advice do you have if let's say you're working as either a researcher, designer, or developer, and you're getting these requirements because somebody has said, you know what, we're going to make a lot of money if we do this.
Yeah, that's right. I was also in this position. Once I was working in an agency, I was working both with the marketer and the founder, and we were working on the content that we wanted to display. So they wanted to make sure, for example, the user clicks on the wrong spot so that they open an ad or they click on something. And I explained to them that, for example, you may, for example, collect a couple of clicks for someone, but after a while they will get, upset. For example, when you open the booking.com and it says, for example, just 5 rooms is left, it's a lie. But at the same time, it makes you feel anxious. So on subconscious, we understand it. Well, although we see it, but subconsciously, we understand that they are tricking us. And they ruin the relationship after a long time. So you may for now get a couple of clicks and it works for you and earn something, but after a long time you will lose that user.
And I guess like you used two examples during your talk. There was LinkedIn, which is kind of famous for that harvesting your whole contact list, and Facebook as well. They're quite common with their notifications and things like that. But the reason they're still doing those actions today is because they worked and they helped them to grow their platforms. So is it a trade-off that your growth will outpace your churn from the people who don't who get annoyed with your platform?
For example, we know that Facebook collects lots of data. All of us, I think we were the users, but after a long time we put them away and stop using them because of the bad reputation that I have right now. So I think overall, after a long time, some people are aware of these kind of things and some people don't care. So still you're going to lose some of your maybe loyal users. So it's still the best choice is that you stick with with ethical choices so you don't ruin your brand reputation like this.
Okay, and that's good advice. And moving on to the freemium model, because you brought up that as one of your patterns, and it was that because I see this a lot where you like a product and they're like, oh yeah, you get a free month, but you still have to give us your credit card details, because they're signing you up behind the scenes and hoping you forget. But are they hoping you forget, or is there something there? Because if they just give it away free the whole time, they'll go out of business. So how do you, if you're a company and you're trying to encourage people, what's the best pattern?
That you actually let them use some of your features for a limited time or a couple of your features, and if they want more they pay for it. But if you make them to give you their billing information and then later charge them, it's going to cost you even more, because if they don't want it they would call the services to cancel it. If they subscribe to buying an item and you receive something, you have to again pay for the postal, pay for the package, and it's going to cost you even more after a while. So it's better to give them freedom of choice.
Great. And then I guess a future gazing one, if these patterns have been around for so long and they're still around, what do you have hope for the future?
Yes, actually, there's a website called Hall of Shame. So it publishes news about what big brands are doing with their talk patterns. Even you can see them, for example, Amazon have the most dark patterns in their websites, or beauty products and those kind of things. So I think you would ruin your reputation after a while, or at least that people who are sensitive on these things, they would find out and it wouldn't look good. So yeah.
Okay, so it's the long game. I guess the challenge, if I'm going to play devil's advocate, just to kind of stir things up. If I'm looking at it as a business person and I see a Hall of Shame and it's got Amazon and it's got Facebook and it's got like LinkedIn, I'm thinking those are the big boys. They're the people. So I would actually, in an opposite way, think, you know what, these patterns work. So is there a risk that that might backfire if the people that are being called out are actually incredibly successful?
Let me see. That's a really good question. For example, if I know, I link my contacts to social media accounts to find them. If I know, for example, one day LinkedIn is going to email them, I would never do this. So it may be they built this feature to help people like me to find the people that I know. But if you have that feature but may cause problems for me, I might never use it. So what's the point of building that feature? So you should be careful with what you're doing. And people nowadays use social media. So if I'm upset about something, about a website, and I write about it, it goes viral. It ruins their reputation. For example, there was an airline, and the traveler lost their luggage, and they decided to build a website paid for promotions in social media. So any person who would search for that airline, they would receive a message saying that they lost their luggages. Do not buy tickets for them. Their help service sucks. So, and after like a week, like it was in news, and they found out that their reputation is being ruined. So, if a user, customer is unhappy with you, they can ruin your business reputation.
Yeah, no, I guess it's because it's becoming more aware, people are becoming more aware these days. If you're a new person without that brand loyalty, it's probably a bigger risk.
Yeah, that's correct.
Brilliant. Well, that actually brings us pretty much to time. So I just want to thank you once again, Shiva, for sharing. I hope everybody out there enjoyed it as much as I did. And I hope that you'll all learn to err on the side of good UX patterns versus the bad ones.
Thank you.
Excellent. So we'll move on to our final, last but definitely not least, talk of the evening. And that is Harry, who's a senior UX researcher at Useberry. And Harry will be talking about how Useberry enables continuous UX research for ongoing product improvements. So I'd like to welcome Harry to the stage. Over to you, Harry.
Hey, Rory. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining today. I'm Harry Karanatsios, senior UX researcher at Useberry, a UX research platform that helps customers conduct remote and moderated research. Today, I'll be walking you through how we conduct ongoing UX research to support our continuous product development and inform our roadmap. What we will be seeing today is the UX process that we have set, why continuous research matters, how we collect insights, how we share the insights with different teams, and at the end, we'll bring a real-life example of how research led to and shaped a product decision. So let's jump into it. User expectations and behaviors are always changing. If we only research one at launch or when something is broken, we risk missing out huge opportunities or critical problems. Ongoing research helps us stay aligned with real user problems and needs, validate our assumptions, and deliver a useful product that is also viable for the business. And when I say useful product, I mean a product that is usable, but also offers the features that customers need. Through our process, we gather data from different sources in a continuous manner. It's like always having a conversation with users, not just a one-time interview. That way we know what's working, what's not, and what should come next. As you can see on the slide, we start with a planning, going to discovery, then we explore solutions and test them during the design phase. Then we go to development and we set up our listening loop. So listening helps us decide on what problems we should focus on and informs the roadmap items. Based on the roadmap planning, we conduct upfront research, upfront discovery for the items on the roadmap. And when we get to the design phase, we explore solutions and test them in an iterative manner before we get to the listening loop, once the product has been developed and it's live. Many times, we are also undertaking UX activities on the development phase. Now, these loops ensure that research isn't just a side project. It's deeply considered throughout the product development phase, and it's also considered by the business before the business decides on the roadmap items that will serve the company's strategic vision. A small note about the slide, we also have other loops that might happen throughout our process, for example, going from design to discovery, but such loops are not shown in this diagram, as we will not be talking about them during this presentation. As I mentioned, we start with listening. We listen to our customers for everything new that we develop. We might capture metrics per quarter for a new feature to measure success or benchmark it, or we might capture improvement ideas via different channels and methods. At the same time, we have set ways to gather customer feedback around the current service offering, which is resulting more in needs, usability issues, friction points, and pain points with our service. We constantly learn from users via the following channels and methods. We do, of course, interviews and conversations with users. We look at customer support logs. We do follow Q&A calls, demo calls, onboarding calls, surveys, analytics, email comms, expert reviews. We even sometimes will get into calls with customers, ad hoc calls, to help them create a test with Useberry. This has a tweak, so the tweak is that we get closer to usability testing. We ask people to do what they ask us to help them with, and then we intervene when we think it's appropriate. We do this with collaboration with SES. Now, some of these methods and channels we are listening are automated, while in some others we collaborate with different departments, or we even take Q&A calls, or we participate in demo calls. So it's a team effort. We also do some things quarterly, for example, competitors review or benchmarking. Now, we do all these methods, and we're trying to listen from current and prospective customers to help direct future efforts by understanding who our target group is, what problems or pain points do they face, what pain points and problems affect them. This can be with our service, Useberry, or a competitor, or with their current process. But we also like to learn what they need and what they value from a solution. Throughout the listening, sometimes we might also capture the why and when a problem occurs and the effect it has on the customers. I think it's equally important to try to surface the effect that a problem introduces to the business as well. And throughout listening, we sometimes also capture the why a solution or a feature is needed or perceived valued by customers, and the effect it will have to the customers if offered or if not offered. While at the same time, again, surfacing the effect that it has on the business is also important. We capture loads of data, and this data come in different forms. It can be questions asked by customers or notes made during an interview. Really, based on these methods, you can understand that we receive a plethora of of data stated in different forms. Once the data have been captured, we store them, we categorize them, and we analyze them. We organize this data that we have heard to generate ideas, and we think these ideas might satisfy the captured customer needs and or solve the problems they are facing. These ideas are prioritized before being placed into the roadmap, and of course, each item that is selected to get into the roadmap contributes to the company vision and strategy. Essentially, we're always trying to create a win-win situation between the customer and the business. So at this stage, we might have a more detailed understanding of a problem or a more generic overview of a problem. Personally, I think it's always best to continue with upfront discovery for each item on the roadmap, ideally 1 or 2 months before any design activities take place. Throughout this discovery phase, our goal is to better understand the problem space by surfacing what we don't know and better understanding the customer's needs. While at the same time, this is an opportunity for us to validate and discard assumptions before delivering insights to the team. There are a couple of activities that we do here. Predominantly, we do interviews, but we are also analyzing sales, customer support, onboarding and training calls, log tickets, depending on what we have. We might be conducting competitors reviews or competitive testing, and we might also be doing usability testing in this phase. During the exploration phase, during the explore and testing phase, we create solutions and concepts to tests based on the knowledge that we have gathered. Usually this is done via usability testing in an iterative manner. And throughout this phase, new knowledge might be gathered that informs or can inform the original requirements and thus the design. We normally, not always actually, when necessary, we start with card sorting and tree testing before creating prototypes. And many times we also do expert reviews before any usability testing takes place. Going from design to development, we also conduct usability testing during the development phase, predominantly when we have a staging environment or in a closed beta environment. There are other activities done by the UX design team here, which I'm not going to be expanding at. Which will bring us to the live example that we have. We will be speaking about the randomization feature. At Useberry, we noticed in data from the customer support that customers are asking how to apply randomization to their usability testing tasks and tree testing tasks. By looking at the ongoing monthly interviews that we do, we noticed in the data that there is a need for questions randomization as well. We went further and we examined competitors from the competitors review that we do quarterly to see what the competition does. Do they offer this feature or not? Really high level. And we looked into more reports that we had, and this particular feature was proposed by experts, and there were other sources indicating the need for such feature. So we thought it worth allocating time to actually conduct a discovery. So throughout this discovery, we conducted interviews and desktop research to understand the benefits and the use cases of the randomization and the problems introduced by not offering this feature. We found out that many customers would like to randomize the way tasks are shown to participants to reduce the learning effect. Or we heard customers would like to randomize questions that follow up a task alongside with the task. We also conducted another competitors review here from scratch, particularly for this feature to get a more in-depth understanding of what use cases do the competitors randomization feature covers and what problems does it solve. This was done before we moved to the explore and testing phase. Throughout the explore and testing phase, we initially conducted usability testing with some concepts. At this stage, we heard that some customers would like to limit the amount of tasks shown to participants to reduce participants' fatigue. We also captured some other use cases that were not discussed earlier. For example, participants would like to randomize only part of the test. Finally, we had some participants mentioning that with one out of the concepts that we presented to them, they could also do A/B testing, which was very interesting because through our listening loop, we had already heard the need to offer an A/B testing feature that will allow customers to conduct within and between subject studies. So based on this data, we brainstormed on a new solution that could offer A/B testing and randomization. And we placed it in a design test iteration before continuing with our dev handoff. This way, we killed two birds with one stone at this stage. So initially, we listened about this feature via our listening loop, and before the feature was released, we defined how to monitor it, how to measure its success, and how to capture future improvements. For this particular project, we didn't carry out any tests throughout development. We could have, we didn't have enough time, and my suggestion will be to reduce the risk as early as possible. So doing usability testing when it comes to the development phase, it's equally important. So some key insights about what we've heard today. My suggestion is to always try to triangulate. And what I mean by triangulation, well, triangulation means using different methods, data sources, researchers to cross-check and validate your findings. This helps making your results more reliable and trustworthy. What we do at Useberry is we normally triangulate by gathering different sets of data, which are gathered by different methods, and sources, and when possible, involve more than one person in the analysis. What we do here is we either do analysis, just one person does the analysis, or we use two people and they can do the analysis in a collaborative manner from start. So get together and do the analysis together to deliver insights, or do the analysis separately and then meet together to discuss the findings and connect the insights. So the approach is, it's up to you. Another interesting part is that you should adapt how you share your research and your findings so people can actually listen. Depending on the phase of the process that you are at or the project, you might have to speak to the business, the product team, or the design team, or even the marketing team, another stakeholder. So trying to explain the effect a problem has on the customer and the business, how it will benefit both, it's always a win-win situation for me. And connecting findings, problems, solutions with metrics that matters for the business or the stakeholders is equally important and helps a lot. Trying to create easily to digest insights is also important. Now, depending on which phase of the project you're at, you might want to bring something more detailed or something less detailed, but try to make it easily digestible. And if possible, involve the team members in the research session. I found this very useful, especially when I'm collaborating with the design team to iterate on design solutions and usability in a qualitative usability testing manner. The team is aligned, everything moves quickly, and there is less need for documentation and time-consuming back and forth. One last thing that I would like to pinpoint here is at least we at Useberry, we try to make a useful product, a viable product, and a feasible product. So useful, viable, feasible. Useful refers to a product that provides the features that the target group needs and allows them to use these features in an easy and pleasant way, minimizing errors and friction points across touch points. Viable refers to the product being connected with the business value, strategy, vision, and pillars. While the feasibility refers to a product that can be built the way it was designed in time and, of course, in budget. The most important is keep doing research, keep listening, don't just wait for a design or a problem. Make it part of how the business is growing, how the business grows. By continuous listening to our customers, to our users, we're not only catching problems and needs early, we uncover new opportunities for growth and reduce risk. Ongoing research isn't a luxury. It's essential to building products that succeed. That's all for me. Thank you, and I'd love to hear your questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Harry. That was a really interesting kind of overview of, I guess, how you use research to build a research product.
Yeah, it was quite high level, I'll have to agree. But I didn't want to get into the nitty-gritty details of, how to discovery and iterate. I think the focus was mainly into continuous listening to the customers by collaborating with different departments, or many times by offering yourself, for example, in the customer support to, see how they do their work, what questions do they get, how we can even improve the experience that the customer support offers. Because the experience is not just digital, it goes to many different channels. And you might be offering all the features and everything might be very well placed, but someone might be talking to support or searching for something online and having a really bad experience, or maybe trying to cancel the account and getting a dark pattern, right?
Exactly. Just one thing I want to, again, actually, just as a reminder to everybody out there, please do write your questions in on whichever platform you're watching this on, and I'll put those questions through to Harry. But one thing that I was just thinking as you were talking about that randomization feature, and I guess this is probably going into the weeds of that, but how do you ensure that there's no, as a person, I might unintentionally create linkages between my questions so that when they're randomized, it breaks things? Is there some way that you can solve for that, or do you just kind of try to educate people not to do it?
I'd say not always. If one question lead to the other and one question has to be answered first, you have to do it this way. The same goes for tasks in a usability test. Before registering, you might have to do a KYC. It's an important step, or it's a step of the registration, so you cannot just ignore it. But if their questions are not connected and there is not particular reason to have them in sequence, I would advise to randomize them to avoid the sequence effects. The surveys, when it goes to usability testing, well, when I'm seeing the same interface again and again, I learn the interface. So if I go from task 2 to from task 1 to task 2 and task 3, in task 3, I would have already learned a lot about the interface, which will make it easier for me to use it, which might lead to me as a researcher not actually evaluating this particular this particular task objectively, because I don't actually know which one of the tasks will participants do when they get into my service. So randomizing them makes sense for me to reduce my bias and make my results and metrics be more sound.
Excellent. And I guess just given Madeline's talk earlier, when you're embarking on a new initiative, do you create a detailed research plan, or how do you go about kicking off your research initiatives?
In the discovery, so discovery and design iteration, many times we do a detailed plan, not that detailed as we saw earlier, but I'm inspired by the idea. I'll see how this could work for us. When we go to the listening phase, I think most things are reside in a repository. So it depends on us to go ahead and look at it and find insights and findings that can help us create ideas that solve customers' problems.
And do you find actually, because you mentioned about that continuous nature, do you find that you end up pivoting a little bit because you're learning something from customers and that's invalidating some previous assumptions that you had, so you end up going in a slightly different direction?
Yeah, sure. And this is part of the process, validating and discarding assumptions. We might have an idea that we think it's great, but at the very end, it needs fixing or it needs updating or adding more features. So we do the listening to get the high-level idea, the discovery to get into more detail, and throughout the design and testing iteration, we might be hearing a lot of things. It's qualitative testing. People are placing their thoughts on the table, and we listen to them. So we might jump back and rediscover or update our process, our vision, or for this particular feature, or even bring something back to the planning phase, so inform the business about something new. This is actually what happened in the randomization feature. We really started by focusing on randomization, but throughout testing, except from new use cases, we actually understood that, hey, actually, customers, participants showed this to us, that this could also be used for A/B testing. And we knew that we needed A/B testing, we just couldn't make the connection. So these sessions actually helped us connect the two insights and, with two birds killed one stone, just one feature, groups and random. That's how we call it.
Excellent. That's always what you're looking for. I guess one question that always comes up with researchers is the difficulty it is getting in front of real customers. So you mentioned as well, again, that continuous nature. Do you find that that is difficult, or are you blessed because your customers are researchers and therefore know your pain and are willing to help out?
To be honest, we have some initiatives here, so I do take a lot of the demo calls or the Q&A calls myself. And of course, I know the platform very well, so I can help our customers. But when I undertake the sessions, I ask particular questions. So in a demo call, I might ask, hey, what are the things that you are looking for within a UX platform? This helps me understand what this persona or this set of people are looking for within a platform. And also it helps me showcase the platform more accurate to them. So it's a win-win situation. I might ask them, hey, what difficulties do you face? Or are you switching from another provider, a different service, a competitor? Why? So I'm trying to capture bits of info throughout the sessions. It's not a lot, but they're happening in context as the customer has the need and they're willing to speak. It's not an interview. It's more natural. It flows more natural. The same goes for Q&A sessions or in the sessions where we help customers achieve something. We might just ask them, hey, how did you try doing this? And we observe. And when they get stuck, we intervene and we say, okay, you can click this part, but we have gathered our insight. But this doesn't stop there. We actually encourage them to continue until the end, so we can explore what further could be discovered in this particular journey. So yeah, that's also another interesting approach. So we do have very engaging customers, but customers reach out to you via different channels every day. If you can work with colleagues to leverage the data or expose yourself in these processes and try to make the process better, but also capture your data while helping the customers, that's a win-win situation for everyone, right?
Brilliant. And do you volunteer your time to other teams like sales or to support, or
Yes.
how do you get that collaboration?
We have things set it up, so it's set up so it's not all the calls or not all the demo calls go through me, but a plethora of them do go through me. We have said, we have some days that we do interviews or usability testing. We know that I cannot take any calls that day or, a couple of minutes before or after these calls. Any other day, I'm happy to get on a call with customers because I'm learning without having planned, giving incentives, or actually doing anything. I'm here, I'm sitting, and the customer support says, hey, demo call, would you be available tomorrow? Yes. Or he might be looking on my calendar and see, okay, Harry is available, so I might pass this as well to Harry. So, recruitment many times is a pain point, but everyone has customers reaching out to them. Try to engage with them and collaborate with other departments. And again, collaborating with other departments helps you refine processes that go outside of the UI, service processes. If I order an item and everything is perfect in the website, but I receive a broken item, that's a bad experience. The wrapping might not be good. There might be an issue on the factory while manufacturing it, or anything in between. But this is a bad process. So we have to listen about this bad experience and try to improve it. It might be just 1 out of a million, and we might take this risk. But if we don't hear it, we cannot evaluate if it occurs more often or not. If it's not occurring often, that's a risk we might willing to accept to take. But if it occurs often, we have to see, are we willing to take this risk and have customers buying and receiving a bad product or not? What should we refine to improve this process?
Yeah, no, it's a great example of just taking the initiative that a lot of people, sometimes they don't even think of getting involved.
There's also a lot of jargon there. I mean, many people, they say continuous discovery. The design sprint might have different words. I've used listening as a loop. Many people might call it different words. That's absolutely fine. My main point here is to set a process, set a vision, set a strategy to listen to customers one way or another.
Brilliant. And you also mentioned about getting the rest of the team involved, because as you said, and I fully agree with this, if somebody can see directly from a customer the pain points or the challenges, it really hits home a lot more than something written in a report. But have you had pushback from the team going, oh, we're too busy, or different things where they don't see it as a proper part of their job?
I've seen both ways, both sides of the coin, I think. I've seen teams that don't want to get involved as much, and teams that really want to get involved. I recall back in the days in a gambling provider, we had 20 people in the back room, all the designers, all the product team. And there have been cases that I just have the agile team, or other cases that I might just have a designer. I think I'm referring to the design evaluation phase at the moment. So I think having people in the back room helps a lot. It helps a lot because everyone is there. You can do quick debriefs after each session, have a journey map projecting onto a board or into a Miro board, whiteboard or digital board, it doesn't really matter, and start building a common knowledge, a common agreement of what happened, which means that at the end of 8 sessions or 6 sessions, we all know what happened. We have all agreed and placed it into a journey map, and there is no one will come back to me and say, hey, where did you observe this? I think it's something else. Everything would have been discussed earlier on. And many times we have this loud voice, a PM or a PO or a stakeholder, that it's my way or the highway. But if you have like 3 or 4 team members and the PO or that stakeholder gets defending their point of view, then via conversation, they will understand that everyone else observed something different. So if we go their way, they will be the ones actually, taking the risk, because with all this process, we are trying to remove or make the risk smaller compared to what it is. If we go back to the listening and discovery phase, in the discovery phase, getting people into the sessions is also important. It's more time consuming normally, but throughout conversation and the interviews, unstructured or structured, more themes and questions might come from the back room. So it's a great opportunity to to ask questions to customers. And in the listening stage, I think we have everything tidied up in our repository, so anyone can go ahead and look. And this is a collaborative effort. So we allocate time to actually synthesize what we found into problems and ideate on potential solutions. So that's also a team effort most of the times.
Brilliant. That brings us actually to time, but that sounds fantastic. Get everybody involved earlier and you'll save time on the back end by not having to go around in loops and fixing things.
Yeah, documenting is good, but if you need to work quicker, sometimes you might document less, or at least take a picture on what you have on your board, especially in the design iteration phase. It works wonders. For me, it has worked wonders in the past, and I'll suggest and I'll propose that you should try it out. If you have any questions or you want to chat with me more about how to do any of this or get any extra advice, let's talk. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can see my email on the screen. It's h.karanatsios@useberry.com.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much, Harry. I hope everybody out there enjoyed it as well. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Have a great evening.
That brings us to the end for today. But if you did enjoy this, we have a conference coming up in Berlin in just 3 weeks' time, where we'll be involving product, UX, design, and dev together. Because if you want to build an amazing product, you need to build it together. And that was a theme that came up multiple times today. We'll have 40 speakers, 8 workshops, 1,000 attendees. So yeah, if you're interested, please join us at that. But if not, we look forward to seeing you at the next UXDX online. I just want to finish by thanking our speakers today, and thank you all for attending. See you next time.